In this video, we're going to go over how to project images as textures onto your 3D models. So the first thing that we're going to need is some type of a 3D model. So for this example, I'm just going to use a cube, but you'd normally do this after you've modeled something and then fully unwrapped it. So let's just go to the UVs, and I'm just going to stretch these down just so this is a little bit more of a square unwrap. So from here, we have our mesh. The mesh has an unwrap. So the next thing that we need is an image to paint on. So I'm just going to jump to the Images tab, hit Add Clip, and do New Image. And we'll just save this on the desktop and just call it Box Texture. We will save this as a PNG and hit Save. And then size, we'll just leave it as a 2048 by 2048, and we'll hit OK. So now we have a model that has an unwrap, and we have a texture. Again, this just saved an empty texture on my desktop. So now what we need to do is jump to the shading tree, and now we need to give this box a material. So we'll just give it a material and just call it box, and hit OK. Now that our box has a material, we need to add this image that we just created to our box material. So we could bring up our Finder window and just drag and drop that image right into here, or we could do select material, add layer, load image, and then from here we're on our desktop. We just need to find that box texture. It's right here, hit open. Now that texture is loaded in there. And the other thing, this texture currently, if we were to look at this texture, it's just an empty PNG, so there's no pixels, no color, no anything. So as soon as I applied it, our textures are displayed, but since the texture itself doesn't have anything in it, nothing's changing color-wise, but it is applied. And to just check that, we can jump to the Paint tab, grab the airbrush. It's just defaulted to its color of white, opacity 100. I can change that brush size, and if I do a stroke, it's going to paint on that texture. So we'll just undo that real quick. It's just going to be these leaves. So I have a red leaf and a green leaf. So again, you could think of these are just images. They could be textures as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to transfer these images onto our UV maps in 3D. So again, you can think of this kind of similar to if this was our Photoshop file, we could drag and drop that leaf image in here, and then once it's in here, we can drag it around and place it wherever we want in the UVs. But instead of doing that on a 2D plane, we're going to be doing that right in 3D. So again, let's jump to the Paint tab. And we're going to be using the paintbrush to make this work. So when the paintbrush is activated, we want our opacity to be 100%. We want our foreground color to be white for right now. So what we want to do is use this little guy right here called Image Ink. So the paintbrush is active, then I click on Image Ink. Now it's going to let me choose a texture to apply. So down here, so again, you might have less settings available, so you might have to hit this little more button. But down here you have this image. Normally it'd be kind of blanked out, but I already started this file. So from here, as soon as you click this little file right here, what's going to happen is it's going to give you a little directory of folders. So what you can do is click this little guy right here, this little drop down arrow, and then you have your image inks if you have the Modo content installed, and this is just a bunch of generic images that's included with Modo. Or I have this tab called Images. You won't have that. What you'll want to do is add a path. So when I click on this, then you pretty much just look through your computer and find the folder that's full of images. So that could be your My Pictures folder, whatever folder you have that has all your images attached to it. So I just made a folder on my desktop called Images, and I threw these images in it. So now that I have my folder hierarchy set up, I can choose this red leaf, for example, and let's click on it. And before we actually project it, let's just look at the image. So the image is a white plane with a little red leaf on it that goes all the way out to the edge. So let's minimize that folder and look back at Modo. So again, this image was selected. So now what you'll see is the paintbrush is selected, Image Ink is selected, we have opacity 100%, foreground color white, and our image is selected down here. Now what we have to do, the next step, is we have to choose a 3D viewport. I only have one active. This is my only 3D viewport. So now I just find a background spot. I'm just going to go over here in the bottom left, so nowhere near my 3D object, and just click. And now what happens is the image appears in the 3D viewport. So now what's happening here is it's just overlaid right in the dead center of the screen, and I can put my box behind it, in front of it, whatever. So let's just move the box out of the way. We're just kind of scrolling over in space. And now let's look at this image and kind of see what it has going on. So it has a little cyan circle in the middle, a cyan circle on the top, and a little cyan square on the right-hand side. So let's see what all three of these do. If I just left-click and drag on the little cyan circle in the middle, what it's going to do is move my image around. And again, this is a kind of a projection, so it's a 2D image. I can't move this farther away from the screen. It's just kind of sitting at the foreground. I really can't put this box ever in front of it or go through it. It's just always going to be sitting in the front of the scene. So again, this middle one, we'll move it around. This top one is going to rotate it left and right. And then this little square right here is going to shrink it or grow the image. And like most things with Modo, let's rotate this a weird way. If we hit this little more button down here, it's going to be in the properties window. So right here we have scale, position, rotation. So again, my properties tab is going to kind of hold a lot of things right now. So I have the paintbrush selected. So here are my paintbrush settings. So let's minimize those. And then the smooth brush is selected. That's this guy right here. That's the type of like nozzle I have. So those are its settings. I can make that smaller. And then here are my image ink settings. So my rotation, let's say I didn't want to have that rotate all goofy. So I'll just have that go from 210 point whatever, zero that out. And same thing with the position. I could maybe give this an exact measurement of 500 by 500, whatever. Same thing with the scale. I could make this whatever size I wanted. Or again, I can use these handles to manipulate my image. So now once we know how to manipulate the image, what we're going to want to do is effectively project or paint this image onto our object. And again, really simple example, we just have a leaf and then a box image. I probably would never project a leaf onto a box, but for the example it works just fine. So what I'm going to do is make this leaf a little bit small, and then I can position my box and get it kind of where I want it. And this is just so I can see what I'm doing. Let's make it a little bit larger. And now, again, my paintbrush is still active. So now if I left click on the mesh itself, it's going to start painting. So we can trace this leaf. And again, we want to make sure that we get, so it looks like I missed a little spot here, so I can just left click again and just make sure that I get that. Or even make my brush smaller and just go right around the borders of this and make sure that I get every little pixel in here. Because again, if I have a lower opacity, it's not going to come through all the way. So now I'm kind of done with my projection. I'm happy that the leaf's on there. I can see it plain as day. So what I can do is turn image ink off. So just left click on that. And now I still have my paintbrush active. So if I was to do a stroke, it's going to paint in white. But now my leaf is painted on here. And kind of a problem that you're seeing is maybe I didn't want all this white background, and I don't want to have to go in and hand erase this. That's just going to realistically take a long time, and it's more work that I need to do. So let's look at that other image that I had. So this one has a white background and is a JPEG. This one is a PNG, and it actually doesn't have a background. So let's project that image. So let's go over to this side. So we want to use our paintbrush. Image ink turned on, select a different image, and now I just need to left click in this viewport to select this viewport. And now you'll see instead of this being all white, now it's kind of a purple color. That's kind of indicating there's no pixels there. So now let's size this where we get pretty much the same size leaf. So I can either shrink the box down and position this, or I can use my widget to make my leaf image bigger. Rotate it and get it positioned. So now that my image is where I want it, I can change my brush size. And again, a quick way to do this is just right mouse click and drag left and right. Middle mouse click is, again, it's going to be your color pick. So now I can just click and drag, and now I'm painting on this leaf, again making sure we get all the borders. There we go. And it looks like I actually missed the middle. So if that's something that happens, I miss the middle and then I rotate my camera, at this point this is projection based, so I can't really say camera go back to where you were. So what I have to do is just kind of do my best to reposition this leaf where it was and then try to fill in this middle section. Or what I could do is just hit the undo button a few times and get rid of my stroke and say, okay, this time I'm going to make sure that I get everything. And if I miss something, like I just intentionally missed the middle, I just don't move my camera. I left click again and I finish filling that in. And now it's filled in and good to go, so I can turn image ink off. I can look at my miraculous creation and I can kind of keep painting. So let's kind of do a little bit of different stuff with this. So again, we have paintbrush, image ink, image is selected, left click in the 3D viewport. We're going to make this a little bit smaller. Now let's just mess with some settings. So let's throw this up in this corner. So again, I'm just going to left click, and this is our normal leaf scenario. Fill in this guy in. And again, if I want, I can change this to textured so I don't have the lighting as much of an influence. So I'm just going to move this over, and now I'm going to go to my paintbrush settings, change my opacity to something like 50, and then do a stroke, just to compare. And again, this is probably going to do exactly what you'd expect. It's putting it in at 50% opacity. Pull this down here. Let's take our opacity up, back up to 100. Now let's change our foreground color to a little bit of a yellow color. Let's do a little bit warmer yellow. There we go. And again, this is at 100% opacity. Make sure I get everything, or just try to get everything. Move this over. Now we're going to switch it to something like a more primary red. And we're done with the imaging, so let's turn that off. And we're actually done with the paintbrush. We'll just hit the escape tool to drop the paintbrush. So again, we have, so let's bring that back up and just do a nice white color. There we go. So we have this guy right here. He came in as normal. He looks exactly like he does in the reference image. This one, again, at 50% opacity, so it's, you can kind of see the gray behind there. This one we just kind of tinted, so if we kind of compare these two, I'll just middle mouse click to select this color, put it right here, middle mouse in the same spot. This one right here is just tinted a little bit more yellow, and this one is tinted to a red color. So our red that we chose was actually something more like this, but when that red combined with the dark green, it does it in a way to really kind of add together. So if you wanted to have one leaf and make it greens and yellows and oranges and reds, like you're doing like a transition from fall or something like that, and you just wanted more control over the color, what you could do would be to go to your original image, and instead of having it be a green leaf, have it be a grayscale leaf, and then when you filled in that leaf with the chosen color, it's going to tint it accordingly. So again, a grayscale leaf would give you a little bit better control over your color, but again, I'll leave that one up to you to decide. So again, this process itself, really, really powerful. Again, I'd kind of stray away from, if you're doing something that's going to have a cutout, like this leaf, for example, I'd stay away from images that kind of have a colored background, or just jump into Photoshop, edit those real quick, save it out as a PNG like this, and then you'll be good to go. But regardless, you can use this on things like a leaf and use that as a transparency mask. You can use it for like painting characters, painting hair, pretty much anything that you're painting that you're using photographs as your starting point, this process is going to work. So again, reviewing it one more time really quickly, we'll do it on this side. We'll do paintbrush, image ink, choose an image, we'll go back to the red one, left click in the 3D viewport to select it, have your brushes already selected. So now I can just go in, paint it. Again, I have a red color, so it's tinting it red. Turn off image ink, and we have our awesome creation on our box. So again, really simple process, really powerful process. Definitely take advantage of this.